Hello and hello everybody and good evening and welcome from a very quiet Kendal Mountain Festival headquarters. As you can see, this is what we're all aiming to get back to in November. My name is Steve Scott. I'm one of the directors of the festival, and I'm really proud to be anchoring, it's very TV speak now, but anchoring the first in our Springing into Adventure series. These are our sort of live event series, and I guess the idea behind these is just to have some really nice chats with some fascinating people, and all these people have inevitably got a specialism in their repertoire, so they're going to share tips and tricks and hopefully inspire us to get outside and maybe take on a new challenge, a new adventure. So I'll be hosting another one in June, but my colleagues Claire Carter and Hannah Foster will also be presenting some of the sessions as well. So thanks for joining us. We're going to get cracking in a second. So on to this evening. I was really lucky to be in the very popular Yeti Base Camp stage at the festival, in our virtual festival in November. And I listened to our special guest tonight, Harrison Ward, live in the studio, and also could smell his incredible food. So some of you may remember those incredible stories from the Everyday Adventure stage. And in a sense, what we're doing is bringing the best of those onto our little webinars over the next few months. So let's get cracking. Let's welcome Harrison Ward on screen into your homes virtually from wherever you are, near and far. So welcome. Hi, Harrison. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. You've certainly, well, I thought I'd done well with the backdrop here of the festival base camp village, but I think you've upped me there with the campfire, and you are really outdoors. So fingers crossed the Wi-Fi is okay there.
Hopefully so. Yeah, it's a lovely night for it, isn't it?
So where are you in the world at the moment?
So I'm based in Ambleside in the Lake District. So I'm just in the north. So originally from Cumbria, but I've been here about 4 years now.
So I think we should probably go back to the start then. So whereabouts in Cumbria are you from?
So Carlisle's my hometown originally. So born and bred up there. Grew up that sort of way most of my childhood. Before moving away to York, and then found myself in the lakes about four and a half years ago now. So it's always been on my doorstep, but wasn't something I really took advantage of growing up.
So we're both Cumberland lads, really, aren't we?
Well, that's it. Yeah, both north of Dunmail.
We're south of Dunmail Race, for those people that do know that reference. Right. Well, that's a great way to start our series, isn't it? Some local lads to kick off the show. What was childhood like for you? Was it outdoors? Was it adventurous? Were your parents adventurous, or was it quite different to where you are today?
I think to a degree. I wouldn't say I wasn't outdoorsy growing up, but I certainly wasn't an enthusiast. I think sort of I was taken on occasional sort of walks into the lakes by my parents. They'd often sort of try and drag me out with the dogs, but it really wasn't something that really tickled my fancy at the time. So I'd often pass it up. But it was very much something that I discovered later in life, sort of the love of the fells, really. But childhood growing up was fairly normal in that sense. I was quite active outdoors in sport and whatnot. But yeah, I really didn't make the most of the lakes while I was so close in early childhood.
So what was your sport? Was it the traditional sports? Or?
Oh, I think so at the time. Yeah, just like anyone really at the time. Bit of football, bit of cricket, hockey, that sort of way. But never really rugby, although I think I've got the shoulders for it, but I never really tried it at the time.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Harrison is a big lad. So moving on towards this sort of career into the outdoors and into food, what are the sort of significant stepping stones for you that you would say maybe changed the course of your life? Maybe we could go on to those.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, food's always been a long-standing passion, I think. I'm completely sort of self-taught cook, but I used to cook a lot sort of growing up with my grandmother. She was a very sort of keen cook, and there's a lot of cooks in the family too. I mean, my aunties does a lot of the catering side of things as well. My mum's quite capable in the kitchen, so it's always been there. I guess it's quite maybe genetic in a way, but it wasn't something I really followed as a career. I worked a lot in the hospitality trade, but I was very much sort of front of house alongside my studies through school and university. But really throughout this time, I guess I struggled a lot with sort of my mental health issues, what I now know to be sort of clinical depression, and something I really battled really all through puberty. And working in that trade, the hospitality trade, I was obviously very close to alcohol a lot of the time, sort of working front of house. And with those sort of ailments, I did really sort of fall into a bit of a hole with it, really. So you mentioned sort of the outdoors and being quite active now. It was very sort of far away my original life. I didn't do sort of any activity at all. Just sort of did really daily drinking. I was a smoker then. I was quite overweight. So it was really only a return to the Lake District when I decided to make a change in my life that really I started to embrace this area I was lucky to be born in, and taking that passion for food with me into the outdoors.
I guess it is a vicious cycle, isn't it, in the hospitality industry with, like you say, with the late nights and the socializing, and you can very quickly get into a rut, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think it is. It's long and sociable hours. I think you sort of live and breathe it, and also those the other side of the bar can become sort of acquaintances and punters too. And finishing that sort of time at night, you want to have your downtime, and yeah, it was just quite an easy sort of snowball effect, I think, to fall into that pattern with sort of that mindset as well at the time. But one I'm happy to have broken free from so far.
So, I mean, obviously, it's very poignant and relevant to all of us being in lockdown. Having sort of a lot of our liberties taken away from us. So, I guess the outdoors has been a real healer for so many people. Those people luckily enough to have it on their doorstep, like ourselves, or whether you have a local park. But what was would you say the driver for you to really make a huge shift in your life? Was it a health warning? Was it some of your friends saying, look, you've really got to stop this loop?
Not really that way. There was sort of attempted interventions at moments, I think, but I wasn't really ready to accept it back then. But it was really the breakdown of a serious relationship for me that really ended up being the final straw. Sort of acting really unfaithfully in the end under the influence, and I didn't realize how far I'd fallen at the time. Really, I didn't really embrace how sort of dark hole I was in, how much I was drinking. I just saw myself as a heavy drinker, but when I was drinking sort of in excess of 20 pints a night by this point, sort of working in the trade. I mean, it was very much my sole focus. It was all I was up to. Financially, I was in quite sort of dire straits as well, health-wise and things. So really, upon that sort of moment of realizing it had compromised me as a person who I sort of value myself as, was a real sort of awakening moment, really. And it was quite an overnight sort of complete change of direction, where I decided that I could no longer be in that city that I was in, and vowed to sort of get sober and remove that from my life and try to sort of become the person I wanted to be initially. So it was, yeah, I guess fighting that stranger I'd become. So quite a personal battle.
Did you have to change the people around you then? Did you have to change you talked about your physical environment, but do you have to change the people who were sort of an influence on you, perhaps?
Not directly. I mean, I do find myself very lucky that I didn't get to the point where family and friends started to sort of leave me behind, really. There was moments of warning at times, and I didn't really heed at the time, but thankfully they stuck by and sort of maybe saw the true character through that. But I think there was maybe some folk from my original, I was living in York at the time, who perhaps were more sort of maybe acquaintances that had sort of developed that lifestyle around, and were people you got to know through that lifestyle, as you do in sort of even more positive vices. And I wouldn't say really sort of had to cut losses or remove anyone from my life to an extent that sort of way. I've been lucky that those that have been around have always been a positive influence and always been willing to show support and help. That, as well as the outdoors, has been hugely instrumental to turning things around, really. Well,
I mean, it's cliched, but it is really inspirational to see the transition. And you're still only 30 years old. I can see you've got a huge number of chapters ahead of you, but to actually come to where you've got to after having lived through so much and so much hardship as well, all credit to you. So
thank you.
Yeah, no, so moving into the outdoor landscape, and it's like a release, isn't it? It's a release for all of us. So how was it at first? Was it quite alien territory for you? Were you really struggling with, you said you're a bit overweight, your fitness obviously wouldn't have been to where it was. So how did you sort of work towards it? Were you just increasing your distances every week, or?
I was sort of really thrown in quite at the deep end, I guess. I think my close friend Ryan, who's just in the other room over there, he turned at my doorstep one day and said he was taking me for a walk. So I didn't really know what to expect at the time. I was presuming more of a walk around the tarn or a local sort of trek through the woods, sort of near where I am, sort of on the border of North Cumbria. And we were heading into the lakes, and I didn't really have any kit to my name at the time, so I was quite. I just threw on what I had to hand. So it was like an old jumper, and I think a pair of trainers and whatnot. And he said we were going hiking up Blencathra, but he took one look at me really and said I wasn't in appropriate gear, and sorted me out that way. But this was only 2 weeks after the turnaround, so it was a complete throw from being sat on that bar stool every night, sort of completely out of my head, to then all of a sudden being frog marched up the side of Blencathra.
Well, I was just going to say, you could have picked an easier fell to climb for your first fell, because there is no real easy route at Blencathra. It's all pretty steep. So yeah, wow, respect.
Yeah, it was just straight into that sort of way, Steve. So that was week 1. Week 2, he had me up Helvellyn. Week 3, Scarfell Pike, and by this point, maybe surprisingly at the time, but a sort of a love had sparked for it, and a new addiction was ignited, and it's continued since.
So obviously that segues us perfectly into food. You mentioned food, obviously, from the hospitality, but I'm guessing in the early days when you were getting into fell walking and getting fitter, your sort of nutritional store, if you like, for these trips probably wasn't what it is today. So what were you munching on in those days? Sandwich and snack bar, cereal bar.
I think to an extent, I think they're always good to have, aren't they, for emergency bits, those snack bars and whatnot. But I still had maybe all sort of extravagant sort of packed lunches and things I was taking up. I think I've always been a lover of sort of good food. I never really want to cut corners at any point really, other than perhaps the darkest days where maybe I did fall in the kebab shop a bit too often. But it was up the fell side of things. Yeah, I was always sort of making lunches to take up there, or maybe leftovers from the night before and packing those up. And I did often get some comments heading up at sort of when they had the soggy cling film sandwiches, and I was there sort of unveiling, some sort of, I guess, albeit cold at the time, but sort of risottos and whatnot, nice pasta dishes and things up there in the fell. So that was there from the start. I've always enjoyed good sustenance.
Brilliant. So I guess with food as well, food is such a social thing, and it is, the best moments are when we're with our close friends, families, having the best food around us. So what would you say, so your ideal group of people is to go on a fell walk, fell hike, with food? Are you usually just looking at one companion? Do you ever cook for more, or do you ever take more food for smaller groups, or is it just a solo trip? How do you sort of balance your adventures these days?
I was going to say, you're going to alienate some of these friends to me now, aren't you, Steve? Making me pick them. But it's a bit of both. I do still love sort of the solitary walks. I think I love getting out there just myself and nature and really sort of escaping. Again, I've said that's been a key part of sort of a turnaround, and I think something that I like to continue doing. Just that shut off from the world and getting out there. But yeah, I've got a multitude that I'm lucky to call friends and family that either from sort of earlier life or even those I've met through this sort of new love of hiking. Folk that maybe live in the area or come up quite regularly that I've discovered. And social media has been quite a big part of that as well. I think meeting people through that side of things. So, it can be me, it can be just one or two. That's usually easiest to cook for, but I've even cooked for sort of groups as large as little sort of 15 to 20 little workshop type things. So it's, if someone helps carry the kit, then I'm happy to cook for more.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm really excited about tonight because I've got 5 kids, and most of them are away now at uni, but, always having to prepare food for more than just a couple of people, and young people as well. I think we need to be mindful that they're quite fussy eaters. So where are you going to take us tonight with the menu and with the food tips that you're going to give us? Where are we going to start?
Well, I think we're going to go through some essentials of what you acquire when you're out in the outdoors, some little hints and tips that can make it easy, sort of the transition from the kitchen at home onto sort of the fell top or the riverside or the campsite, depending on where you're starting. Some people may not have any experience at all of outdoor cooking, but I always like to say, well, everyone's been around a barbecue at some point, so it just depends on how you view it. And I suppose even a picnic, to an extent, it might not quite be cooking, but it's still enjoying food in the outdoors with that sort of secret ingredient that is being in the fresh air. But yeah, well, I hope they cook for you as well sometimes, though, Steve. Do they?
My son actually is a real foodie. Yeah,
Yeah.
We were cooking pizzas outdoors last night. Believe it or not, I think you'd inspired us to try something new. And unfortunately, he ran into the French doors in the kitchen with the first pizza, and it went straight into the glass and across his face. So it bounced back and hit him, unfortunately. So it didn't get off to a good start. So that became the calzone cooked in the oven. But then we tried again on the sort of camp stove.
Well, he sounds perfect for outdoor cooking, Steve. You've got to have a lot of compromise at times, and sort of things can go wrong, and you've got to adapt.
So what are the essentials you're going to give us tonight? What would you say the sort of fundamentals that we need to consider for eating outdoors, really, whether it is, like you mentioned, going into a sort of a valley bottom or riverside meal, and then obviously progressing up onto higher ground, which I guess, weight is always a factor, isn't it, in that?
It certainly can be, yeah. I think a lot of people do sort of ask for the secret sort of the secret behind keeping a bag sort of light, and I'm not the one to answer that. That's maybe somebody else, but it's aside from the regular kit, I think we won't go into, of course, your safety gear or your boots or your waterproofs in this extent. But aside from that, I think obviously basics are a heat source. So are you stove in some sort of setup? So whether this is a little sort of small little gas burner that can sort of fold down into a little pot or a little mug, or something bigger. So like sort of stoves that you can see on screen now, sort of like a bigger gas setup. I like quite a wide base on my pan, so you're not having quite a heat.
So that's quite a big canister on there, isn't it?
That too, yeah. Well, I don't like to run out. I mean, if you're midway through a nice dish and you run out, then that's an issue for me. But it's
yeah.
But I've used little wood burning stoves in the past as well, bits like that. So there's all sorts. But I think essentially the stove is a key component for the.
So what's this one? What sort of fuel is that you're burning there?
So this one runs on wood, sort of wood or wood pellets. So I tend to use sort of kindling from the garage for this one, but you could sort of forage some twigs or bits around, but they tend to burn not too efficiently if there's bark on them and stuff. But yeah, nice little fun burner where, of course, you lift it off from the ground, so you avoid sort of the scorch marks that you perhaps get from having an open fire, which of course can be a bit frowned upon in these sort of areas, and really have to be something that's got to be taken a lot of care of and should be really done only at home or designated sites. So that little burner is a nice way to enjoy a real fire and also a bit more control to it. So and also you get the little warmth afterwards. With the gas, you've got to turn it off, but that way you can keep going as a little a hand warmer.
So on those two images, which were fantastic shots, by the way, you look like you were quite exposed in an exposed place. So what would you recommend as far as finding a bit of natural shelter, maybe putting a screen up? I guess wind is the enemy of a good cook, isn't it?
Wind is very much the enemy. Yeah, I can get away with a bit of rain on drizzle. We're used to that in Cumbria, but wind, yeah, certainly a tough one. So a bit of natural shelter is perfect. A bit of rock or even just a bit of ground that's head a bit lower. But wind shields also do make quite a bit of difference. Those two stoves you saw there are quite high from the ground, so traditional sort of windbreaks tend to be a little bit lower down, more for your sort of your ground-based gas stove. So perhaps you need something a bit more hardy or even custom for those. But yeah, using the landscape is to suit your purpose is the best. Cooking on sort of a top of the peaks or whatnot, on top of the hills, obviously you're putting yourself to a lot more exposure. So inevitably you're going to get a bit more of nature. But I think it's all part of the challenge in the side I enjoy really.
Yeah, I guess on the higher ground, we're looking at smaller stoves, primer stoves, some of these jet boils as well that you can operate in the shelter in the porch of your tent or bivvy. I guess that shifts your awareness of safety as well, because that obviously is a factor we need to mention, isn't it? Looking after yourself, the last thing you want is a serious burn, I guess, from anything up there.
Well, that's it. I mean, there's enough hazards there in the first place, aren't there? I think before you start adding things like that in, and even sort of your tent cooking as well. Obviously, some tent porches aren't aren't suitable for cooking in, and you can sort of, got to watch out for your likes of your carbon monoxide and whatnot when you are burning little fires in there, and even smoke inhalation. So yeah, it is a thing you've got to be aware of, and obviously take appropriate action for.
Okay, so let's say we've got our solid base, obviously looked after that environment, not burning the ground, maybe putting some base layer of stone down or something that protects the environment. What about the utensils that you tend to carry with you? How does that vary?
So again, this can completely depend on the dish I'm cooking and sort of how many I'm cooking for, I guess. If there's quite a big group, then I'd rather take a larger pan up so I can do it in a one go rather than everybody waiting, getting hungry and cold. But it really varies. So I think basics for me, I like to take sort of quite a small, lightweight chopping board, something that sort of slides down the back of a rucksack or even folds up. So that could be wood or could be something more lightweight, like a foldable plastic piece. Obviously, a good knife, if it's a foldable sort of camp knife, is good, or even a kitchen knife with a sheath, so it doesn't sort of pierce your bag. It's a good one as well. Obviously, keeps it a bit cleaner. So those two, the stove, a basic pan of some sorts. I mean, you can get pretty much most things done with a frying pan or a small saucepan that way. Even if you are just reheating stuff up, I mean, that's always a good beginner's step into the outdoors, to cook it at home first, or to really prep it almost to its full extent, and then transfer it out, and work yourself up to where sort of, I guess, where I like to be, which is prepping and sort of making from scratch.
Yeah, I think there's nothing better than having some of the most amazing home cooked food, but reheated out there as well. You don't need to cook everything from scratch, do you? It's all about the prep as much as anything, isn't it? Yeah.
And there's lots of little bits to speed up as well. I mean, again, when you think of sort of pack size and pack weight, and obviously you don't want to be casting up sort of huge full bottles of maybe of oil or full bottles of seasoning, stuff, that all things that are going to add more weight and take more room in the pack. So it's all about decanting things down a bit as well. And if you do have to prepare something sort of halfway, for example, to cut a bit of weight and to sort of make it easy to transport, then certainly those are steps you should be taking.
So what about the sort of techniques that we're cooking? The traditional approach with the frying pan and the fry up, if you like. But how varied can we be with such a limited, one stove or maybe two stoves, two small stoves? How creative can we be with our cooking techniques?
Well, I really think it's as far as the imagination wants to go. Really, I think that's the challenge I enjoy, is trying to sort of recreate restaurant style dishes in remote locations on minimal equipment. So I think over time, of course, sort of ancestrally we learn to cook outdoors over fire, and as things have gone on and stoves have developed and ovens and sort of domestic living, we've refined these recipes. But to take them back out to their sort of their proving ground, if you like, is the bit I enjoy. So techniques wise, I think you've obviously got one source of heat, and it's usually direct from the bottom. So a bit different, obviously, to having an oven at home, or even some of those that have the old ping machines as well for some dishes that are nice and quick. So tends to be the outdoors goes for a lot of the whole dehydrated meal packs. That's obviously two sort of 2 to 10 minutes on the of heated water. They've certainly got their place, of course. I mean, they're essential to sort of expeditions and whatnot, and a good thing to have, maybe as a backup in case you are struggling or need a bit of sustenance out in the hill. But technique wise, I mean, anything. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say they've got a lot better, haven't they, over the years? I was just smiling to myself because I sort of remember back to the old scouting days. We were doing our night hike, one of our first night hike badges at whatever we were doing. We were out like Keswick at Ashness, Ashness Bridge there.
Yeah.
We did a hike via Wat Endleth over to Rosthwaite and round the lake and what have you. Anyway, we were cooking, on the little thing, when our packs were so heavy, and it's because we had tins of beans. That was it. We were so primitive, and that was our diet for the next day and a bit, really. But now, like you say, with a lot of these freeze-dried foods, some of them can get quite fancy.
Yeah, there's some fantastic ones now that are completely all sort of real ingredients, no additives in there either. There are no preservatives. They're all cooked sort of as they would be sort of in a restaurant or proper kitchen at home, and then just dehydrated, ready to take out. So equally as delicious, I guess. I just like to sort of go and remove that step of waiting for it to cool down and dehydrating it. Really, just doing it from scratch. But what sort of stove are you cooking on for the scouts trip then? Was it a little spirit stove or?
Yeah, it was. It was a paraffin stove or
There you
equivalent.
go.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I've not cooked too much with them as such yet, but I imagine they're quite hard to keep going for a long period of time, but probably good for reheating things through.
Yeah, this was a long time ago, Harris. So, so what about the sort of core ingredients? You know, whether you're going up on the fell or down to the riverside, what would you not be without in your pack, in your sort of in your portable kitchen?
Yeah, well, it's staples really. It's cliche, but it's seasonings, I guess, sort of just the salt and pepper, for example. And my sort of basics. I suppose it can be a bit funny to some that those are two things that are always in my pack, but they're there, and a good oil with quite a high smoke point, I guess, because again we've mentioned you get quite sort of an intense heat source from the bottom of a stove. Therefore, you don't want to be using anything that's got quite a low smoke point, something like an olive oil that's more designed for sort of drizzling over your salad, really. So you want something quite high smoke point.
All right, so you wouldn't use an olive oil then? Did you say they've got a low smoke point?
Low smoke point, yeah. So again, if you're having on sort of a stove there where you're getting quite intense heat, which is often quite concentrated into one spot, especially ones with a smaller burner, the oil itself is just going to burn. So you'll find that then transfer to your food, and the whole thing really will start to catch, and you'll burn a lot more on the base of the pan. So you want something more like a vegetable oil or a rapeseed oil, something with a high smoke point to cook for. So
what about something like you know, the coconut oils that come in a block? Are they any good? Again, do they burn or?
I think they're a bit higher than traditional olive oil, I think. But yeah, generally they I'm not cooked with those out in the field. I have cooked with those at home. Obviously, you've got the flavour aspect to them as well. They can impart quite a bit of the flavour to certain dishes. So as long as it's a dish that's going to complement it that way, I suppose that's grand. But yeah, quite another nice way to go about things, and a bit of a healthier option as well.
We've got the patchwork quilt Harrison at the moment. I can hear you. I'm sure everybody else can, but we've got this amazing matrix of pixels at the moment that's probably sending half our audience into sort of hysterics. But yeah, no, it does look quite different, but you can still speak. So that's the essential thing. Unfortunately,
am I still a quilt?
You're much better than a quilt. Right, we're back. So yeah, so the oils, obviously the salts, the peppers, what about herbs? Are you a dried herb person or are you a fresh herb person?
Oh, now you're getting personal now, Steve.
I know, but you know, it makes a difference, doesn't it? Putting a bag of basil in your pocket.
Absolutely. Well, I think when it comes to herbs, really, some herbs are better off dried, or some herbs are better off fresh. So I think it depends what you're using. I will try and buy fresh where I can. I think sort of the addition of sort of fresh parsley or fresh basil add a lot more sort of flavour and sort of impartments, and also sort of the scent in there as well than they would do if they were dried, for example. But when it comes to things more like thyme or rosemary, for example, more sort of hardy herbs, they're absolutely fine to go up dried. And I think oregano is usually the one that's a bit of a middle ground. No one's really made their mind up whether or not it's best to be fresh or dry for that one. So go with dried, easy to carry, lighter.
So what are you taking the foodstuffs in? Are you taking them in like your Tupperware dishes? Are you packing them, you know, quite compressed in seal bags? How are you carrying this stuff?
Yeah, so it varies. I think one of the best things you can do is to sort of reuse and recycle a lot of containers you have. I mean, you'll all have things around the house that could have sort of dual purpose. So I tend to use a lot of hair gel pots because I go through quite a bit of hair gel. So at one point, I think people used to often spot the pots by the dishes and often think that VO5 was a secret ingredient. But I've started taking the labels off now to try and diffuse that situation. But they're great pots because they've got a screw top lid, so they're sort of completely airtight that sort of way. Things don't spoil, things don't tip out into the bag.
You don't get a flavour of whatever the chemicals that go into those. You don't. Obviously, you wash them out, but
that certainly helps. Yeah, I've washed them all out to begin with, of course. Yeah, and but they're great little pots. So things like that. Obviously, you get some of the more larger yogurt pots can be quite good to transfer things up in as well. And then especially little bottles, little toiletry bottles, or even little miniature alcohol bottles, which not something I partake in now, but certainly things that people have around the house. They can be great for taking up a little more liquid oils, your vinegars sort of thing, to save you carrying those big bottles around, really. So anything I'll get my hands on that way. And again, sometimes you prepare things sort of semi-prepare or fully prepared, pack them that sort of way. Even you could do sort of your more dry goods, a lot lighter to carry things, obviously rice as your pasta when they're not cooked. But if you are wanting to rush for time, you could pre-cook those as well, heat those through, and just make sure you cool them quite regularly when you take them out the pan initially. But really, it's a game of Tetris, to be honest, Steve. It's just getting it in the pack as and where they will, with various shaped containers, various implements.
Have you done much foraging then while you're out and about? You know, sort of the wild sorrel or, you know, the blueberries. Do you tend to have a look around your environment wherever you are to enhance your dish?
You've pretty much listed the soul of my repertoire when it comes to foraging just there, really. So in terms of, I've done little bits. I've gone for obviously the wild garlic, as many do. I've seen the little bilberries as you get in the fells. Nettles, of course, are a huge staple. That sort of way, quite a good sort of spinach replacement and full of nutrients that you don't really get in sort of supermarket-based veg. But when it comes to things like, I guess, mushrooms and elements like that, it's really not my expertise. There's obviously other dangers that come with that. I'd love to team up with a forager, someone who knows more what they're doing, and I'll do the cooking. But for now, I've only really dabbled in that side of things. But
I think there's an episode in that, you know. Definitely.
There you go.
Yeah,
there's plenty about it. Again, it's finding people who know what they're talking about, aren't they? And
well, if you're going to get that Michelin star, you're going to have to start foraging, Harrison.
I'm not sure they're giving it to me on the hillside. I'm not sure health and hygiene would have it.
So right, I tell you actually, what I loved last night. I was looking at one of your Instagram stories, and you were down by Lake Windermere, I think, with incredible dish. But was it something with blueberries in it? But it was like a cake. What's the name of that dish? But it looked amazing.
Yeah, it was exactly that. It was a cake. Yeah. So when you were on about techniques before on your camping stove, that there is really as far as your imagination wants to go. Because yesterday, I baked a cake for the first time on a camp stove. So just that one heat source, using a sort of a special bit of a kit that sits on the top, acts like a convection oven. And I made a cake mix up there. It was completely vegan as well. The company I had yesterday doesn't partake in animal products, so I had to sacrifice some of those elements as well and attempt a vegan cake for the first time on the camp stove. But it came out great. Yeah, I was chuffed with it.
It looked amazing. So how do you prep that? Let's just talk about the cake. Sorry, we've cut straight to the pudding. But it did look amazing. For those people who want to see that, just have a look at Harrison's Instagram. Is it on your Instagram story or?
It's on the story at the minute, yeah, but I've got a post to follow, so it'll be on there. It'll be on there soon.
Yeah. So you pre-prepped your mix, presumably? Did you at home in the kitchen, or?
No. I did it all from scratch. So I did it at location. So as far as I went in terms of pre-prepping was measuring out the ingredients. So I wasn't taking a whole bag of flour and a whole bag of sugar. I'd already measured those out and took those out with me. But then other than that, it was all completely mixed up from scratch by the lakeside. Got the stove going that way. So it was a nice lemon drizzle blueberry cake. It was completely vegan, sort of. It was delicious. It was great. It was maybe a little bit overdone on the outside if I'm being picky. But then again, I did cook it on a camp stove, so I think I'm allowed that little leeway. But the inside was spot on.
Can you fire those ingredients on air now, please? Can you just give us quickly? So
that one, yeah, I can do. Yeah, if I remember it off the top of my head. So that one was so it was self-raising flour. I think it was about 250 grams, about 160, 180 of sugar. There was bicarb in there, bicarb of soda. There was baking powder, just half a teaspoon of each. Then it was soy milk. And it was oil. And again, I just used the usual oil I used. I used a vegetable oil, something that really wouldn't add too much flavour. So I wouldn't want to go for an olive oil that would maybe add more flavour to the dish. There was lemon juice. So I presume there was a bit of science in there with the lemon, acidic lemon and the bicarb, maybe producing some of the bubbles that you get with the egg traditionally. And I believe that was it. That was it, all mixed up. Just beat up on the hillside, really, and straight into an oiled container, because I couldn't butter it, because again, that wouldn't make it vegan. And cooked for 25 minutes.
how come it didn't stick then to the pan? What did you put instead of butter to stop the cake sticking to the pan when you flipped it out?
So I used oil, like I
Oh,
had inside it. So I just used a bit of oil instead of the butter. Yeah, you could also use some baking parchment, I guess, and it went into a little silicon mold that actually was made for the particular stove I was using, and yeah, that was it. It fell straight out. Didn't even no bit stuck at all. No sort of prying it with a knife. It was straight out onto the board. So
I
it was
think
a very successful first attempt.
I think cake's amazing because you can sit there with a cake and be happy with that, with a hot chocolate or a coffee or a tea, whatever you like. But having a nice piece of cake that's just warm off the camp stove is amazing. I remember once we took the kids on like a backwoods camping course with some friends who run courses here in Kendal called Wood Matters, and we made these amazing chocolate orange cakes. So you scoop,
Yeah,
you've probably
yeah.
heard of this, scoop out a large orange and put the chocolate cake mix in the orange, put the top back on the orange and put them in the embers of the campfire. And you've got this amazing orange fragrant chocolate cake that you just eat out. And honestly, the kids, well, we all loved it, to be honest. It was amazing. So yeah, those things can really shift the mood. And actually on this day, it was one of those sort of constant drizzly days. It wasn't torrential, but the mood you could sense just lifted. And that's the great thing that food can do, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, as you've said there, Steve, it brought people together. People were chipping in. It gave a little new sort of heightened the experience of where you were, and also sort of maybe alleviated some spirits in a drizzly day. So, yeah, I think there you go. Food and the outdoors together, winning partnership.
It is, and I think it's what we all need. I think we can all go out, whether it's in our gardens or out in the outdoors, and obviously responsibly and leaving no trace. I've got to stress that because you know
Absolutely.
that there is a sort of disconnect still. I think, especially with our nation to nature in many ways, and we've seen a lot of mess out there. So not that the people watching this are the people that will probably leave all their camping stuff behind. I'm sure they're not. But yeah, absolutely leave no trace. So what would your ideal day be? Where would your ideal location would it be? Going up on the fells cooking, or would you prefer to you get a few friends round and just go down by a riverside, or where's your favourite location?
I think being in an area like this again, it has to be up the fell tops for me. That's the bit I've really fell in love with. I mean, we had some sort of smaller remote hills and nice river spots up in the area where I was born, that I did enjoy as a young kid. But again, I think it's the whole combination for me of the challenge of heading up the hills or the uphill struggle that's quite a bit like a physical manifestation of my own sort of journey, and then heading up there and enjoying those views at the top. And so much I think we can rush to the top, get to that summit, maybe just grab a selfie at the top, think we've done it, but to just sort of sit up, pitch up, get a nice sort of sit mat down, get the stove out and start prepping some food out there, I think really just lets you sort of take in that moment a bit longer, and then just enjoy sort of a bit more escapism from busy lives we lead, and just really get back to nature. That's all I'm about, really, completely. I just love that escapism of just being there, the views, and great food. So location wise, yeah, certainly the hilltop. If you went into which hilltop, I think then you'd be asking, really. I think they've all got different memories depending on company, depending on the time, depends on initial moments I went up there, or the view that you have when you get to the top. But yeah, I'll certainly be avoiding the honey pots, I think, in the next few weeks. But there'll be some nice little ones, outlying fells, and maybe the far eastern fells I'll be enjoying a bit more this summer.
So what would you say your food inspirations are as far as styles of cooking, chefs, and sort of culinary dishes from different parts of the world? Have you got a favourite, or do you like to sample lots of different things?
Yeah, I love the fact sort of how you can see the culture of a country or a region through its food, and that's always the bit that's really sung to me. I wouldn't say I'm hugely well travelled, but it's something that like to do more of in the future. But yeah, cuisines wise, I say Greek's probably my favourite. Greek's a bit of an unusual one, I guess, but Greek sort of cuisine. Obviously, Italian is quite classic, and sort of Asian cuisines. But I'm always liking to try something new. I think that's the appeal for me. I think the experimentation side, the new flavours that you might not have got before. And again, it's all about that sort of people coming together, I think. And if you're in someone else's neighbourhood and they're sort of suggesting what's something that you should eat and something you should try, or an ingredient you've not seen before, then I think again that again just brings that whole experience to another level and allows you to sort of maybe intercept and walk in their shoes a bit. So I've always embraced that in terms of the cultures and different foods and different areas, even if it's just in sort of Britain, sort of just in different regions around here. I mean, we've got our own delicacies up here as well. Of course, you know, we've got our Cumberland sausage, which is a lot of the a lot of the historical elements when the shipyards at Whitehaven were quite major. So the spices coming in from the Caribbean, for example, making their way into sort of a quite British fare. But yeah, love all sorts that way. As for people, I think I'd have to say my gran again. Really, I think my grandmother was hugely inspirational for that side.
What was your favourite dish that she used to cook you?
You're asking. Yeah, I mean, she did a lot of baking growing up. A lot of baking was how I started initially. So she was quite, she was very religious, so quite into sort of cooking for the parish and whatnot. So I was always giving a hand with that side of things. But from memory, I think that it's roast dinners on a Sunday. I think. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. But when again the whole family came around, I think just bringing people together once again, everyone chipping in, that real sort of togetherness vibe. I think that's something that always sits long in the memory. And yeah, and lit the spark for me in terms of pursuing cooking as a hobby, I guess.
It's amazing, isn't it, when you look back at our parents or grandparents' generations or beyond, you know, how the food trends shift and how our diets shift. You know, like you say, you instantly triggered a memory of my grand's cooking, and sounds like they were quite similar. You know, she used to love cooking for people just in the neighborhood, and you know, it was like an open door on a Sunday. And I always remember massive rice puddings. You know, there would be a roast, but there'd be a massive rice pudding that everybody would, and it would always have nutmeg sprinkled on the top of it. Really creamy whole milk rice pudding. I've always loved rice pudding, and I think that's because you know, so many associations with that. Food does that, doesn't it? Just triggers those memories.
Absolutely, yeah. It takes you right back into the moment, doesn't it? Or takes you back to a location or who you were with. Yeah, special, very special moments like that.
Have you ever seen that program? Is it on Netflix? I don't know if you've got Netflix or not, but it's a chef. Unfortunately, he's not with us any longer. Called Anthony Bourdain, and he's got the program Unknown Parts. I adore that program, and I came across it just by accident. My wife was watching it, and she said, "Have you seen this?" And I thought, well, no, I've not heard of him, and I'm addicted. I mean, it's literally a culinary geography lesson, but the people he meets and
absolutely
the icebreaker that food creates in those scenarios is just, yeah, if anybody wants to watch a great food program, I recommend it. It's addictive.
Well, there you go, Steve. You asked for people that sort of would spring to mind for me, and other than people I've known sort of growing up. Yeah, Anthony Bourdain's a fantastic one, I think, and again had his struggles as well, growing up in the kitchen, sort of dabbling drugs and drink and sort of things. But yeah, really sort of got to the same level of the people he was talking to, I think, on those travel shows, and really embraced their cultures. But yeah, it was a sad loss, really.
It was a very sad loss. I was always amazed at how he would just attack anything. There's no hesitancy with what weather is eating the sushi or some of the, you know, the hot pots in Sichuan in China. It was just complete courage. You know, I'd be like, oh no, I don't think I can eat that. I've tried things in my life that. What's the worst thing you've ever eaten, Harrison? What would you reckon the worst thing?
Worst thing, sheep's eye. I think a sheep's eye was the weirdest thing. Yeah, that was unusual. I'm not even sure how it came about. I'm not sure it was, to this day, if it was actually a culinary experiment, or if it was just someone having a bit of a laugh in the kitchen days. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend that one. But yeah, again, I've always been someone. I'm not really a fussy eater, so I'm someone who likes to try new things. So yeah,
I tried a sea slug once in China, and that was not good. Neither was jellyfish, actually. I don't know. It was quite, yeah, it didn't.
Yeah, again, sort of snails and frogs' legs in France, sort of thing. I mean, I tried them, but I'm not sure I'll be going back for seconds. But it's yeah, I think it's important to tick these things off sometimes and see if you like them or not. Be it sort of veg or meat dishes. But
yeah, so okay, so we've put some menus online as well. We might go through that in a second, but we've had some questions in from a few people, and I'm going to start by reading. And we've had one from Kate, and she said, or asks, I should say, what's your biggest challenge to date and biggest still in your dreams?
wow, quite a deep one there. Quite a deep question. Challenge wise, I think I have to refer back to sort of my own personal challenge. I think overcoming sort of alcoholism, obesity, that side. Obviously mental health battles, which is a constant thing. I don't think that's something that will ever disappear. That's certainly the biggest sort of challenge aspect for me, I think. Physically, in terms of the outdoors, I suppose, maybe running a marathon was probably biggest for me. Perhaps that was again only maybe 11 months after the whole turnaround, so it was a complete different world really to what I was in before. And looking forward, I don't know. I'm not. I tend to take one day at a time a bit, really. I sort of live in the moment quite a bit. So I don't really take things for granted of what's coming. I think sort of where I am now, I didn't really expect to be here at this point. Either where I am doing something like this, or even where I am as a person. There was moments in my life where I didn't think I'd make it this far. So I think I take it really all for granted, and anything on top's a bonus, really. So I'm happy where I am, happy in the world. Happy in the location I'm in. So other than that, with the friends and family around me, I'm pretty content.
Brilliant. Okay, we will come on to where you see yourself in the next few years, and but we've got another question, and this is from the Adventure Book Club. Have any books inspired you to get outside? That's a good question.
Books for outside. I mean, cookbooks were certainly, obviously, again, the inspiration. I mean, we've talked about a bit about that, but in terms of actual books for outdoor activity, not a lot. I'm not a huge sort of reader of sort of that side, really. I've often found more sort of inspiration through sort of I guess historical stories and things, or maybe challenges gone by. But even like, so I suppose the Waymark books and stuff are not something I've really read through yet. I mean, maybe that's a bit sort of sacrilege, really. But I've tended to sort of find a lot of inspiration from those around me, or stories I've heard in the grapevine. Sort of, again, if it's the Cumbrian sort of fell running legends around here, or again some of the mountaineering exploits that I know you've discussed a lot, sort of your festivals over the years, and had them come and talk about their stories. And I think I've taken a lot more inspiration from that than I have sort of written literature to a degree. But even though they've probably wrote about those stories as well, I've not read their books. But it's,
yeah, no, I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think people, especially when you come to Kendal, obviously you can get inspiration from all angles, whether it's literature, the guests that we have on stage, everyday adventurers, normal people doing incredible things. But yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? What's motivated you to get outside? And you mentioned some of your friends, just getting you out the door, because often that can be, especially when you're going through mental health challenges, is actually getting over the doorstep. It's like going for a run in wild weather, isn't it? Or just
yeah.
taking the dog out in rubbish weather. It's getting over the doorstep that's often the hardest thing for a lot of us. And once you're out there in that element, in that environment, it changes, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and it becomes quite an addictive thing in itself. I mean, yeah, I still have those moments now. Sometimes where you got to sort of drag yourself up and out sometimes, but and some days I don't make it that far, but I don't beat myself up for it either. But it's yeah, I mean, having friends there to pull you out to that extent was a huge thing. I know not everyone has that either, but there's always people, like-minded individuals around that you may find at, again, things like the festival, or you may find on social media, or even groups elsewhere, that are people you can sort of embrace and sort of enjoy these moments with. But yeah, you never regret getting out there, though, that's for sure. Even if it's the wildest weather, coming back in for that nice warm shower afterwards is it's pretty special.
Yeah. Actually, I've got to do a plug for a book I think you should read, or a few books, because he's one of our guests on this Springing into Adventure series, and that's anything by Tristan Gooley. Actually, I think you'd enjoy them. purely because you love the outdoors, you love looking at things and looking at nature. And he's written a few books on natural navigation, and we're going to be talking in a few weeks, it's in June actually, about the secret world of weather. So just reading the natural elements around you when you're out in the outdoor landscape. It doesn't have to be on the high fells. It can be walking in your park or just looking at the sky from your house. So his books are, I can't recommend them highly enough. And actually, you could just read 2 or 3 pages and get a lot out of it, and then come back to it at any point, or you can obviously plow through it. But there's so much information, and I think you would love it. So check out his book. So yeah, a little plug for Tristan there.
It sounds hugely immersive, and maybe something that's nice to read in your tent after a nice cook.
Yeah, he's going to teach us all something about the weather and just looking around us, looking at our environment in a different way.
It's fabulous, amazing.
Yeah. So I'm just seeing how long we've got. Yeah, we've got 5 or so minutes. So you've really kindly prepared a couple of recipes for us, and we're going to leave those on PDF. I think we're going to put them up online on our channels, social channels, and also on yours as well. Morning fuel, vegetarian lunch. I'm just looking at it now. I'm feeling hungry. I haven't had my dinner yet, believe it or not. Anytime and sweet tooth. What are you going to pick one of these that we can just go over now quickly, just to tempt us to whet the appetite?
Yeah, so I popped a few on there, I guess, for different times of the day and for maybe different sort of dietary requirements, or as you said, for those of a sweeter tooth. We've spoke about the cakes earlier, though, shall we? So we'll maybe move on from that one. And those who saw, I suppose, the piece at the festival last year on the Yeti stage, one of the dishes I cooked there is actually one of the dishes on that PDF as well. So I guess, yeah, I mean, let's go with the first. Let's go with a nice breakfast dish, I guess. I mean, it's not particularly sort of vegetarian friendly or whatnot, or particularly that sort of way, but very versatile in terms of you can change it up, do all sorts of different things with it, different sort of garnishes or different sauces. I've gone with like a little balsamic sort of sugared onion sort of relish type thing on this one. Again, of course, you could replace the meat side of things or the egg there with other elements to suit dietary requirements. But a lovely one just to enjoy a morning in nature. And just different components, different techniques that get shown there as well. So quite a simple,
and obviously for the veggies amongst us, we can just drop the bacon. Simple.
Well, there we are, exactly. Yeah, and any vegans after that, I'm sure there's equivalents as well now. There's all sorts of new sort of ingredients coming out now, aren't there? They can replace and sort of still.
Yeah, the vegan bacon's amazing now. Veggie bacon, if that's what you call it. But yeah, my family were predominantly veggie. We have been for a few years, but it's incredible the alternatives that are on the market now. You mentioned the burgers as well. It's on the recipe. Some of them are just as good, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. Obviously, I've put some burgers on there as well. Again, the one I've done there is mainly a meat mix, but as it says there, obviously you can buy shop bought or make your own. So if you were making a nice, perhaps curried sort of sweet potato blend, you could do for a nice vegan option there. That can go quite nicely as well. Or you could even make some nice ones. Beetroot scratched up is good as well. There's all sorts you can make in there, so it doesn't always have to be traditional meat. You can make lovely options there and take those out into the hills with you as well, set them outdoors.
They do look amazing, and a surefire winner is pancakes. We all love pancakes. Big stacks, or the breakfast pancake is a winner, and you can add anything to them, can't you?
Absolutely, and I think there's something that's very easy to transport as well. I mean, for those, I did actually make those at home, the mix, and what I did is I decanted that into a flask. So it was basically we were wild camping that night. Again, leaving no trace, as you stressed before. After we did sort of such, but taking it in a flask, of course, keeps it cool as well as it would keeping a drink hot. So it kept all the eggs and whatnot refrigerated nicely, and it meant you could just pour it straight in the pan the next morning. So that would work well again for things like omelettes as well, other dishes that sort of way. But yeah, a great dish that's really, really versatile on a camping stove.
Fantastic. So we will put those incredible recipes up. I will cook them. not all at once, but I'll have a go. I'm gonna learn all these tips that you've put on there.
Well, again, it sounds like your family should give you a go, Steve. It sounds like you've done a lot of the cooking before, so maybe they should cook them for you.
Yeah, I probably should cook more. I'm probably watching now and they're going, he doesn't cook enough.
Oh, I see.
No, I love cooking. Seriously, I love cooking outdoors. Last night was a start with our pizzas in a pizza oven, but and it's a basic one, but it worked amazingly well. And yeah, it's just amazing how much fun it can be. And I think, yeah, whether it gets your family out or your friends, or it's always a good surprise to throw in there, isn't it? To cook something up fresh or warm as an additional contribution to a lovely night or day or afternoon or even breakfast.
And as you say there, it doesn't have to be on the hillside or the mountaintop. I mean, you were just in sort of your garden that day. So again, just getting out there in sort of green space you've got, or if it's a park close to home or a river, there's always some green space to be found no matter where we are. So just spending a bit more time enjoying it and creating something tasty for lunch or dinner is a great way of doing that.
So we've a few minutes left, but I was just going to sort of wrap up really by saying, where do you see the next few years going with food? Is it something you want to keep as a passion, or are you into maybe progressing it further into more of a career? Or
again, I don't. As I said before, really, I just sort of I take it a bit as it comes. Certainly, food for me as a passion is something that I think will be here, sort of lifelong. Now it's been something that's been ingrained in me since childhood. Something that survived sort of, I guess, the darker days and coming out the other side, and now being merged with the new passion of being in the fells and out hiking. So I can't see that going anywhere fast. That's for sure. Unless maybe I lost my hands or something, maybe that maybe stopped me. But other than that, I think it's something that will stay with me for sure. But future plans for myself, I don't know. I just hopefully I'm out there ticking a few more of the Waymarks off, maybe getting some hills further afield, and hopefully a bit more travel under my belt and experiencing some different cultures and cuisines. Really.
We've got one more question. One last question. It's from a Jake Stevens, and he said he's a bit of a food test. This bit of a food challenge, and it is question for Harrison. Right, here you go. How do you make a baked potato exciting? Right, so quick fire, putting you on the spot question.
Yeah.
Well, the potato exciting.
All sorts of options there. It's chosen one of the most versatile things going, I think, there, the baked potato. So, and again, if you were cooking it on a camp stove, again, a similar piece of kit that I had the other day with the cake, you could do baked potatoes from scratch on there, or even do them from home and tin foil them up, take them up, and they'll still be nice and warm at the top for a good couple of hours. But all sorts you can do there. Any fillings you can think under the sun. You could even scoop them out, mix them with a nice bit of maybe sort of sun-dried tomato, like a pesto in there as well. Get some nice fresh veg through there as well. If you're eating dairy, I guess some cheese obviously throw in there is lovely as well. But really, anything you like. I mean, that's so versatile, a baked potato. I mean, surely.
I think he meant it in a sort of an outdoor food context. But you're absolutely right. I'll throw my two pence in if I'm allowed. I love it with red pepper hummus and a touch of red onion chutney and some pine nuts as well in there.
Well, you can tell you've been out of Kendal, Steve.
Yeah, and what else? Avocado. So it sounds posh, doesn't it? But yeah, you can spice it up really easily, can't you?
I thought you were going to say baked beans and cheese.
That's the old me. I'm different now. Look,
that's it.
You've set me on a new track with this essential cooking. You know what? Actually, what would be lovely is if you and I go out and we shoot a little clip and film, and we do some cooking together out on the fell side. I think that would be great, because we're all sick of doing this Zoom thing, aren't we? But hopefully we can do it soon, and we'll carry on our new channel, which we're launching in very soon on the Kendal Player, as we're going to call it, Kendal Mountain Player.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I look forward to seeing it launch.
Yeah, it will be, and this is the exact thing we want to do. Is we want to make adventure and all our content accessible to lots of different people, and also it will involve us going out and just having incredible meetings with people like yourself who are not only inspirational but can also teach us a thing or two. So yeah, let's do it. Let's make a deal. We'll go out and try and cook a 3-course meal with a few friends as well.
That sounds good. Are you taking the reins that day?
I'll buy the food. You do the teaching. That's a deal. Yeah.
Great stuff. Deal.
All right. Well, honestly, that brings us to an end of the hour. We could have chatted for hours, and obviously, I've got to say a heartfelt thanks for being so open. I think you inspire hundreds and hundreds of people from the challenges that you've come through. We can all relate to it, elements of it, but honestly, it's just brilliant. So thanks so much, and we will see you real soon. Harrison, thank you.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for tuning in.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. So that sums it up from Harrison. I just want to say thank you for those of you who've tuned in tonight. Keep an eye out on the website and on our social media feeds for the next few sessions. We've got outdoor swimming. We've got bike packing for families, getting off road with your families, doing bike touring. We've got obviously Tristan Gooley, who I mentioned. So yeah, keep an eye out online, and yeah, join us again soon. So have a great weekend coming, everybody. Thank you. Bye.